I used to think old houses just made sounds, pipes groaning, wood settling, wind pressing against the windows. It was easy to explain the noise when you live alone. But some sounds don't come from the house. Some sounds come from inside the walls. When I moved into that place, I thought I'd struck gold. It was an old Victorian home on the edge of a small Pennsylvania town, surrounded by bare oak trees and a collapsing white fence. The rent was cheap, too cheap, but I told myself I'd lucked out. The owner, a thin woman in her 60s, told me her brother had lived there before he disappeared. She laughed when she said it, a nervous little chuckle that stuck in my head. I was a writer then, or trying to be, and I thought solitude might help. The house smelled faintly of dust and something metallic like rain on old nails. The floorboards creaked, the wallpaper peeled, and the ceiling fans wobbled dangerously when turned on. It was perfect for what I thought I needed, quiet. For the first week, everything was fine. The house had quirks. One door that never fully closed, another that stuck shut, but it had character. I'd sit by the window with my coffee, watching fog roll through the trees, thinking about how peaceful it was. Then I started hearing the scratching. It began one night around midnight, faint and rhythmic. I thought it was a mouse. The walls were old. Vermin were inevitable. But it wasn't scurrying. It was slow, measured, like something dragging its nails down wood. I clapped, stomped, made noise. It stopped. The silence returned. I went to bed. The next night, it started again. Same sound, soft scraping, somewhere behind the bedroom wall. I knocked back this time. To my shock, the sound stopped for a moment, then came again. But this time it was 2 knocks. I froze. I knocked once more, nervous laughter escaping my lips like a reflex. And again, 2 knocks came back, steady and deliberate. I told myself it had to be pipes or something shifting. I turned up a podcast and tried to ignore it. By morning, the air felt different. Heavy charged. I told myself it was lack of sleep. But I noticed something odd while making coffee. The wallpaper near the floorboard in the hall was torn. Not peeled, torn, as if someone had pulled it back with force. Beneath it was wood, gouged and scratched deep. I pushed it aside with my hand. My fingers brushed something cold. A small hole, jagged, leading into darkness. I shivered and stepped back. I told myself I'd call pest control, maybe even the landlord. But I didn't, because part of me didn't want to know what was in there. That night, the scratching grew louder. Not just in one wall anymore. It was all around me, moving. Kitchen, hallway, bedroom. Slow, dragging movements that seemed to travel. I barely slept. The next morning, I found something on the floor beside my bed. A small, splintered piece of wood, darkened by moisture. It smelled faintly of rot. I hadn't noticed it before. I picked it up and felt an odd chill rush through me, like static electricity. I dropped it and decided I was done pretending this was normal. I called the landlord. She didn't sound surprised. "Oh, the walls creak," she said. "Old house. It does that." "No," I said. "It's more than that. I think there's something inside the walls." A pause. Her tone shifted, softer. "Don't open them. Promise me that." "What?" "Just don't. People hear things sometimes. It's an old house. You'll get used to it." She hung up. That night I drank. Too much. I just wanted to sleep through the noise. But around 2 in the morning, I woke to the sound of whispering. I thought it was the radio at first, someone mumbling low and fast. But it was coming from the wall near my head. I held my breath. The voice was faint, almost soothing at first. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was pleading. I pressed my ear closer. It grew clearer. "Help me." My blood turned to ice. I stumbled out of bed, knocking the lamp over. The voice stopped. The house was silent again, except for the faint creak of the floor under my feet. I didn't sleep after that. I sat on the couch until dawn, watching the first light creep through the curtains. When I checked the walls again, the torn wallpaper had peeled further, curling away like old skin. Beneath it, there were more scratches. Fresh ones. That afternoon, I went into town to buy plaster and paint. I told myself I'd patch the holes and be done with it. But when I got home, I saw something that stopped me cold. In the dust on the floor, near the hall where the wallpaper had peeled, were footprints. Bare, human, small. They led from the hole in the wall toward my bedroom. I followed them, trembling. They stopped at the edge of my bed. I called a friend, Tom, an old college buddy. He was skeptical, but agreed to come by. Probably some animal, he said. He was practical, always was. We tore off a section of the wallpaper together, exposing the wallboards beneath. The wood was splintered, as if something had clawed through from the inside. Damn, Tom muttered. You got raccoons or something. Could be a crawl space behind here. We decided to pry off one of the panels. The wood cracked, dry and reluctant, until we could peek inside. I expected insulation, maybe a nest, but it was hollow, deep, and cold. Tom shined his flashlight inside. His face went pale. What is that? I leaned in. There were drawings carved into the beams, crude stick figures, symbols, words scratched in jagged letters. Don't listen. And below them, something worse. A handprint. Small. Human. Fresh. Tom swore, stumbling back. Man, that's Jesus. You need to move out. I nodded, but part of me couldn't look away. That handprint. It looked like a child's. That night, I packed a bag, determined to leave in the morning. But the house didn't want me to. Every light in the hallway flickered, then died. The air filled with a sound, a low moan, vibrating through the walls. I could feel it in my bones. The voice came again, whispering through the plaster, close, desperate. Don't go. Don't leave me here. I backed toward the front door, fumbling for my keys. But the door wouldn't open. The knob wouldn't even turn. I yanked and pulled until my palms bled, but it stayed shut. The whispering grew frantic. Stay. Please. Stay with me. Something knocked inside the wall. Hard. Once. Twice. Then again. Louder. Closer. The plaster bulged. I stumbled back, tripping over my bag. The bulge cracked open, a thin line splitting the wall. Dust spilled out. Then a small, pale hand reached through. I screamed. The hand groped blindly, fingers twitching, nails black with dirt. I ran to the window, slammed it open, and climbed out into the freezing night. I didn't stop running. I drove to a motel 30 miles away and stayed there until sunrise. I called Tom. No answer. I called the landlord. No answer. I tried to report to the police, but when they went to check, the house was empty. No holes. No drawings. Nothing. But they found something. In the basement, beneath a loose board, they discovered a sealed crawl space. Inside were human remains. Small bones. A child, they said. They never found out who she was. I moved to a new apartment a few towns over. Tried to forget. Tried to sleep. But I still hear it sometimes, late at night when the world goes still. That faint scratching behind the wall. And sometimes if I listen too long, I hear her whisper again. Don't leave me here. I never should have gone up there alone. But I convinced myself it was harmless, just a weekend getaway to clear my head. The cabin had been rented online, tucked away in northern Vermont, miles from the nearest town. The pictures looked charming. Rustic wooden walls, a stone fireplace, the forest stretching endlessly beyond the windows. I was exhausted from work, from life, from the constant noise of the city. A quiet weekend in the woods sounded like salvation. The drive was long, the GPS often losing signal, forcing me to rely on winding dirt roads and vague landmarks. The sun was already dipping below the tree line when I finally spotted the cabin. It was smaller than in the pictures, squat and weathered, almost like it had grown from the ground itself. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, the kind that seeps into your lungs and stays there. I parked and carried my bags to the front door, the boards beneath my feet groaning with every step. Inside, it was cozy, the way abandoned cabins often are when someone has at least tried to care for them. Dust motes floated in the late afternoon light, and the fireplace looked functional, though unused in years. I set my things down and explored. A small kitchen with rusty utensils, a bathroom with cracked tiles, and a single bedroom with a bed that smelled faintly of mildew. Everything seemed fine, ordinary, safe. I started a fire in the fireplace and made myself some instant noodles. The sound of the wind outside made the cabin creak and sigh. I laughed at myself, thinking about how nervous I was over nothing. The forest beyond the windows was silent, almost unnervingly so. No birds, no animals, just trees swaying gently in the wind. I shrugged it off. I was alone, that's all. As night fell, the quiet changed. Not the peaceful quiet of nature, but a heavy, pressing silence, like the air itself was waiting. I heard it first as a faint tapping against the window. I froze. The moonlight reflected off the glass, but there was nothing outside. I told myself it was a branch, or a raccoon, or my imagination. But then the tapping came again, more deliberate, slower. It wasn't random. Someone, or something, was out there. I approached the window cautiously. The forest was dark, nearly black, the trees like silent sentinels. Nothing moved. I turned back, telling myself to get a grip. Maybe it was just the wind. I locked the door anyway, a habit I hadn't needed to worry about in years. I went to bed early, thinking sleep would erase the unease. Around midnight, I woke to the sound of footsteps on the porch. Slow, heavy, deliberate. I held my breath, listening. The sound circled the cabin once, then stopped. I dared not move. Then a whisper came through the thin walls, barely audible, like someone speaking directly into my ear. You shouldn't be here. My heart hammered. I froze. That was not the wind. That was not my imagination. I grabbed my phone. No signal. No Wi-Fi. Nothing. Panic began to seep in. I tried the flashlight on my phone, sweeping it across the room. The shadows stretched unnaturally, dancing against the walls. And then I saw it, a figure in the corner of the room. Tall, hunched, its head tilted in a way that made no sense. It was blacker than the shadows, yet somehow distinct, as if it absorbed the light around it. I blinked. It was gone. I told myself I was dreaming. I had to be. I left the bedroom and checked the rest of the cabin. The kitchen, the bathroom, the living area, empty. But the fireplace had been cleaned, ashes swept aside, and a faint scent of burning wood lingered in the air, though I hadn't touched it. My stomach churned. I went back to bed, pulling the blankets tightly around me. The whispering returned, soft and almost playful, circling my bed like invisible fingers trailing along my skin. "Stay with us," it breathed. I couldn't move. My body felt heavy, unresponsive. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come. The darkness in the room thickened, pooling at the foot of the bed, stretching tendrils along the floor. Shapes began to form, humanoid but wrong. Limbs too long, heads tilted, faces blank. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning. The shapes moved closer, gliding silently across the floor, merging and separating like shadows in a storm. I could feel them watching me. I could feel their hunger, their anticipation. The whispering intensified, now dozens of voices overlapping, chanting my name, urging me to rise, to join them. I don't remember how I got out of bed. Somehow, I found myself standing, facing the shadows. My legs trembled violently. I tried to speak, but only a hoarse whisper emerged. The air around me pulsed, thick with cold. The shapes lunged. Not at me, exactly, but around me, weaving, circling, testing, probing. And then one leaned close, so close I could feel its breath, cold and damp, like soil and rot. Its face was a void, empty and infinite, and I swear I saw the faint outline of my own face inside it, twisted, screaming. I ran, out the door into the woods. The wind howled in my ears, branches slapping my face. I didn't look back, but I could feel them behind me, moving silently, always just beyond sight. The forest became a maze, paths I thought I knew twisting into impossible shapes. Hours, or perhaps days, I ran. My legs gave out. I collapsed in a shallow ditch, shaking, covered in scratches and leaves. When I woke, I was back at the cabin. The door was open, inviting, as if nothing had happened. The fire had died. The ash lay cold and gray. I could hear whispering, faint now, almost friendly, urging me inside. I couldn't resist. I stepped in, and the door closed behind me. I tried to leave the next morning. The road was gone. Trees stretched endlessly, no sign of civilization. I walked for hours, eventually finding a trail. It led me to a ranger station, where I explained what happened. They looked at me strangely. Cabin 12, that's been abandoned for years. Forest fires, structural damage, no one's been allowed in. I insisted. They shook their heads. The only path into those woods is blocked. We've searched for years. Hikers go missing, never found. That cabin? It doesn't exist. I drove home, haunted. But sometimes late at night, I hear the whispering again. From the corner of my room, from the walls, from my own thoughts. Stay with us, and sometimes in the shadows, I see shapes that move just like those I saw in the cabin. I can't sleep properly anymore. I don't know if I ever left that forest, or if it follows me, waiting until I'm alone again. Sometimes, I wake up and find dirt on my floor, scratches on my furniture, marks that look like they belong to long, crooked fingers. And every time I hear my name whispered, I know they're here. Watching, waiting, patient. I haven't told anyone else. They wouldn't believe me, but I know it's real. And I know, if I ever return, even in a dream, I will never come out. I didn't think much of it when I drove past the neon sign flickering in the pouring rain. It was late, I was exhausted, and the highway ahead was nothing but a ribbon of black asphalt cutting through the Arizona desert. The motel looked straight out of 70s travel magazine, with peeling paint, a cracked asphalt lot, and a buzzing sign that read vacancy. The kind of place you stop at when desperation outweighs common sense. My car's heater had died miles back, and I couldn't risk freezing on the road. I pulled in and found the office empty, save for a bell that sounded more like a rusty groan than an actual alert. I rang it anyway. Nothing. After a moment, the door creaked open from the inside, revealing a dim, fluorescent-lit office lined with dusty ledgers and a thick smell of mildew. "Hello." My voice sounded small in the emptiness. No reply. I shrugged, grabbing a key hanging from a rack that had a half-dozen labeled rooms. Room 6. It was a ground-floor corner room, the kind I preferred for a quick stop. The hallway leading to it smelled of bleach and old carpet. As I inserted the key into the lock, I noticed a faint scuffing noise behind me, like someone or something dragging its nails along the linoleum. I froze. Nothing. Must be rats, I thought. I turned the knob and stepped inside. The room was stale. Wallpaper yellowed with age. A small desk littered with pamphlets advertising local attractions that probably no longer existed, and a bedspread that smelled faintly of smoke and despair. The lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized. I dropped my bag on the floor and went to the tiny bathroom to wash my face. The water was lukewarm at best, the mirror slightly warped, reflecting my tired, drawn face back at me. I unpacked minimally. Laptop, charger, phone. I had planned to write some notes for my road trip blog, but the room had a strange weight. It pressed down on me in a way I couldn't name. I shrugged it off as exhaustion and sat on the edge of the bed. That's when I heard it, a soft scratching like fingernails against the wall, coming from the corner of the room, near the closet. I turned sharply. Nothing. Just shadows. I told myself I was imagining things, that the isolation of the desert, the endless miles of road, had frayed my nerves. I opened my laptop. The fluorescent light cast a harsh glare, but I tried to focus. After a while, I noticed the scratching had stopped. Maybe I had been right. Maybe. But then the whispering started, quiet at first, indistinguishable like the hum of the heater. I leaned forward, trying to listen. My name. It was my name. Faint, almost like the wind, but unmistakably calling me. I stood and walked toward the sound. It seemed to come from the closet. The hairs on my arms prickled. I told myself firmly, there's nothing there. Nothing. Yet my hand hovered over the knob, trembling slightly. The whispering grew louder, urgent now, insistent. I pulled the door open. Empty. Just a hanger, a moth-eaten coat. Nothing more. My chest tightened, and I laughed nervously at myself. Get a grip, I muttered. I tried to sleep. I really did. The bed creaked under me. The room stayed unnervingly cold despite the heater cranking at full blast. Around 3 a.m., the shadows shifted. Not from the window, not from the flickering light. Something moved behind me, just at the edge of my vision. A figure? My heart jumped into my throat. I turned quickly. Nothing. But the whispering had returned. Louder, closer, circling me now. I bolted upright. The closet door was wide open now, though I had closed it after checking. I didn't hear it open. My phone was on the desk. The time, 3:14 a.m. I grabbed it, planning to call anyone, but there was no signal. The motel had no Wi-Fi, no bars, nothing. I was alone. That's when I noticed the walls. Small scratches, fresh, like something had been clawing at the plaster. I reached toward them. As I ran my fingers over the marks, a sudden, guttural hiss came from the corner behind me, and I froze. "Get out!" The voice was low, unmistakable, not in my head, but somewhere tangible. I turned, and the air thickened, pressing against me. A shadow detached itself from the wall, stretching, pulsing, blacker than anything I'd ever seen. Its form wavered, fluid, like smoke trapped in solid form. And then it lunged, not at me, but across the room, leaving a cold, oppressive trail. I ran. I don't remember grabbing my bag. I just remember hitting the door and throwing it open. The hallway was dark, longer than I remembered. Each step echoed. I wanted to run, but the door to the office, where I had entered, was now closed, with a small note pinned to it with a rusty nail. My name was written on it, in my handwriting. I froze. My hand shook. I didn't know what to do. I tried the doors to the parking lot, locked. All of them. And then I heard footsteps. Slow, dragging, coming closer from the far end of the hallway. The whispering returned, insistent. "You shouldn't be here." I backed up against the wall. The closet doors in the rooms across the hall all creaked open simultaneously. The temperature dropped, my breath visible in the light from the flickering bulbs. Shadows moved inside the rooms, one by one, all turning to look at me. And then, the last room's door, the one at the very end, slammed shut. I don't know how long I stood there, paralyzed. The shadows receded as suddenly as they appeared. The doors were all closed. No scratches on the walls, no note, nothing. The office door was still locked, as if it had never been opened. The only thing that remained was the soft hum of the fluorescent lights and the faint smell of smoke and mildew. I never slept that night. When the sun finally rose, I left. I didn't bother to stop for gas. I just drove. I never went back. Months later, I found a website that detailed abandoned motels in Arizona. Room 6 of the Red Sands Motel was infamous, it said. Several guests had gone missing over the years. Some claimed to see shadows, hear whispers, or find notes written in their own handwriting.